we can do a similar conversion to factors. And this is also a really common mistake, and that is that categorical data is imported into R and it's being read as characters, or oftentimes, as is the case with the category variable, and that is when the categories, the names of the categories are numbers, R might think of the variable as an integer or a decimal as opposed to as a categorical variable. So that's something to be very, very careful about. So if I run a summary on the category, rather than it telling me how many storms in the data set were category 1, how many were category 2, how many were category 3, it's telling me information like what is the median and the mean category, which really doesn't make any practical sense. Like, what is the mean category of the storms in the data set? And again, that's because it's storing category as a decimal. When we're working with categorical data, these should be stored as a data type factor. And so the way that we convert something to a factor is using the command factor. So it's not as dot factor like it was with converting to an integer. We don't put the as dot before that. It's just simply factor. So I take the storms category variable, I convert it to a factor by applying the factor function to it, and now I'm going to assign the result back on top of the original storms category column. So that's what this first command is doing. And now let me take a look at what the resulting summary is. So when the category variable was being stored as a decimal, the output was like this numeric summary of means and medians and first quantiles and third quantiles. When I convert this to a factor, and now I'm thinking about category as a categorical variable, the summary output is now counting up out of all of the storms in the storms data frame. First of all, there were 14,734 observations that were not hurricanes, that didn't have a category. So they got coded with NA. Okay, all the rest of the observations were hurricanes. And out of those, 2,548 were category 1 hurricane. 993 were category 2 hurricanes. 593 were category 3, 553 were category 4, 116 were category 5. So when our data is being stored as a factor, as a categorical variable, the summary output is telling me the count, the frequency, how many observations occurred in that category. And if we run the structure command, it's telling me now that category is being stored as a factor. It's telling me how many levels there are. In other words, how many classes of category there are. And then it's telling me what the name of each of those are. And now the names 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are no longer treated as numbers, but they're treated as characters. So the name of one of the levels is 1. The next level has a name of 2, and so on. Okay, and so the last thing to mention here is this has come up, and that is in R, when data is missing with good reason, as is the case with like any storm which is not a hurricane, has no category, So the category is not applicable. Uh, it gets coded with an NA. Okay, and notice that is not the character string NA inside of double quotes. That would be read differently. So this is just treated as a missing value. So missing value should be coded with the with an NA, not inside of quotes. So we don't code missing values with random things like -99 or the number 0 or a blank space character or an NA inside of double quotes. But missing values in R, these are coded with an NA. That means missing value. And that missing value could be due for many reasons. It might be due for practical reasons, like tropical depressions don't get categorized, only hurricanes do. It might be due to practical reasons like, hey, we didn't have the instruments to measure the diameter of storms until 2004. It might be due to like user error, like someone forgot to record a value. There could be all sorts of reasons why we have missing data, but how we encode that missing data in R should be with an NA value. Okay, and so just to wrap things up before we get into plotting data in the next video, we've been talking about different functions in some of these videos, like the head function is a function. There are lots of other different functions I want to point you to that I listed down here. So you can play around with all of these different functions. If you're curious to get help on any of these functions, just remember you can do question mark. And we'll be using these functions at various times throughout the semester. But here's kind of a nice little place to kind of refer to really common functions that we'll be using more frequently over here. Okay, thanks everybody. In the next video, or in the next couple of videos to wrap up this week, we'll be talking about ways that we can plot data using what is called base R. Thanks, everyone.